Does anyone else randomly imagine doing the worst possible thing in a situation, even though you'd never actually do it? Totally normal. Called the call of the void https://fr.m.wikipedia.org Wikiapelgivite. Pretty sure the reason for it is because we wouldn't actually do it, like jumping off a building. We're afraid of what would happen if we do, and we're afraid that we have the ability to do it. Fear of loss of life. I think people with OCD get these thoughts all the time. Could be dead wrong about all of that though. I'd love to hear from someone who actually knows the psychology here. Lol. I often imagine driving my car off a bridge. Intrusive thoughts. I honestly used to think I had a severe mental illness. It turns out most people do this. Most definitely. Especially at work, because white-collar jobs just feel so fake. Imp of the perverse. Yes, it's a very common response from your brain when you're in a situation where you need to be careful. It's your brain's very clumsy way of saying, hey, be careful. Same goes for holding delicate things, where you might get a random thought along the lines of, if I throw this to the ground it will break. I often worry when I am ready to board a plane that I stash drugs in my rectum. I've never did or sold drugs, lol. The thought doesn't mean you're going to do it, it just crosses your mind. The crime deed isn't done. This question reminds me of a personality test I took once as a consideration for an employer. Background: I worked for a private security firm for several years, working up to supervision, management, and ultimately HR director. We had unarmed and armed staff dependent on the risk level and contract, and one of our contracts was to provide one-on-one armed guards to accompany after-hours ATM runs in dangerous areas. A guard with the technician. One of the questions, and asked a couple of different ways, was, have you ever thought about robbing a bank? Supposed to be a litmus test, I guess, for how incorruptible the applicant was. I answered yes. And when asked how often, I wrote every time I'm in one. The bemused bosses went over the results with me and pointed this out. I told them, well, isn't that the job? If you're not noticing weak spots and vulnerabilities, thinking like a crook, how else do you know where to watch the threats? I still do this: note exits, position and alertness of staff and any guards, whether the vault is visible, and if the door's open, how far the bank is from known law enforcement response. It's ingrained now. Thank you. I thought I was warped. Every day. Definitely. Bill Burr has a funny bit about it. These are known as intrusive thoughts for most people. And yes, they happen constantly. Call of the void is what it's called. Yes, it happens. Usually depends on what stresses I have going on in life. Yeah, I totally know what you mean. Sometimes my mind wanders off into some pretty crazy scenarios too. Like one time I imagined a big blackout at home and all the chaos that would cause, praying we wouldn't lose our important documents. It's funny how your brain can come up with such wild ideas. Strangling my cats that I love so much, lol. I told my husband once when he was fishing something out of the disposal that I always stood far away from him when his hand was down there, so I wouldn't be tempted to throw the switch. He looked at me like I was crazy, which is how I found out not everybody thinks about inadvertently doing the worst thing. Yep. Every single day.